Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take complex sources, could be dense research, overlooked history, or like we're doing today, a really immersive novel, and we just pull out the insights you need to get to the core of it, fast.
And today we are jumping feet first into the world of contemporary romance. We're looking at Sarah Adams's novel, In Your Dreams. We've got a ton of excerpts, character notes, analysis. We're going way beyond just a simple plot summary here.
Yeah, we really are.
We're focusing on how identity is really forged through failure.
Yeah.
And, how a community can help someone heal.
That's it, exactly. Our mission today is, I think, super clear. We're going to extract the key narrative pieces, figure out what is driving these characters, Madison Walker and James Huxley, and really uncover that thematic core.
Right.
It's all about self-discovery, overcoming some pretty intense anxiety and trauma, and that really complicated path to finding where you belong. This isn't just a sweet story. It's a detailed look at personal reclamation.
And, as we step into this, we kind of have some expectations set for us by people who really know the genre. The novel's been called fantastically swoony, sweet, and sexy.
Mm-hmm.
It's also been praised as a quick, fun, slow-burn rom-com that's full of cozy, small-town vibes.
And that phrase, slow burn, that's a huge clue for us, isn't it? It tells you that the emotional payoff is really earned. It's built through gradual vulnerability, not some kind of instant, unbelievable attraction.
Absolutely.
Before we really get into the sources, we should probably take a moment to talk about Sarah Adams herself, the author. She's this indie success story from Tennessee, which is a key detail, given the story is set in Rome, Kentucky.
Right, that Southern sensibility is all over it.
It really is. She calls herself an indecisive introvert, a coffee lover, and what I find so inspiring is that she wrote her first novel while her daughters were napping.
Wow.
Yeah. That kind of grounded domestic reality, it just shines through in the themes of finding home and finding stability.
And her intention, that's really powerful too, and it definitely informs how we should look at this. She says she hopes her stories make readers laugh, maybe cry a little, but always leave them happier than when they started. So that promise of emotional satisfaction, it's baked right into the novel's DNA.
And knowing it's being published in Great Britain in 2025 by Headline Eternal, that just gives you a sense of its broad international appeal. But the heart of it, it stays right there in the American South.
For sure.
Okay, so let's unpack this journey. And we have to start with the protagonist, Madison Walker. She is the source of pretty much all the narrative tension, but not in the way you'd expect. She isn't a villain or a diva.
No, not at all. She's really a victim of her own incredibly harsh self-perception.
Yeah.
Madison Walker defines herself, and I mean brutally, as the failure. And this is not like a funny exaggeration. It is a deep-seated, paralyzing identity that has shaped her entire adult life.
And the sources show us this self-image was just meticulously built over a long history of what she sees as these public disasters and career screw-ups that she just can't shake.
She has this almost personal vendetta against that old cliche, give it your best and forget the rest.
Oh, she hates that.
She absolutely hates it. For Madison, that saying is a total lie. She believes that trying her best, her absolute all-out best, is exactly what led her to catastrophe again and again.
She thinks it's advice for, the naturally gifted, people who don't have to worry.
Exactly. And Adams gives us these really specific, almost anecdotal reasons for why Madison feels this way. And they go all the way back to her childhood. We're talking about moments that, for most of us, would just be funny stories you tell at a party.
Right.
But for Madison, they cemented this core belief in her own incompetence.
Yeah, and we've got 4 big incidents detailed in the sources. It starts with that really relatable childhood trauma of a bad haircut.
Oh, the haircut.
At 6 years old, she cuts her own hair, and the result, she said she looked like Weird Barbie, which is funny. But it established this early idea that when Madison tries to create something, she just messes it up.
And then you fast forward a few years, she's 12, and she tries to be creative again. This time, she improvises lines on opening night of a play.
Oh, no.
It was described as a total disaster. It made her castmates furious. So she wasn't just bad, she actively disrupted the whole group. It just reinforced this idea that she can't function within a team.
And then comes the teen rebellion phase, but even that just ends in public shame for her. At 17, she spikes the punch at prom.
A classic move.
A classic. But instead of being the cool rebel, she gets caught. Earns herself detention and community service. Every single time she tries to live a little bit outside the lines, it just results in humiliation and punishment.
So by the time she's an adult, all these little disasters have just stacked up. She quits her secure, sensible job as an elementary school teacher, the safe career path, and she does it to chase this dream of becoming a badass chef, like her idol, Chef Zora Brooks, who she calls the Catwoman of chefs.
I love that nickname. But that decision was a massive risk, right? It was her trying to break that pattern of failure.
And it backfired spectacularly. Not because she wasn't talented, but because she just didn't have the emotional armor to handle the toxic environment of elite culinary school. The real catastrophe, the one that broke her, happened at the Culinary Institute of New York.
It's actually harrowing when you read about it. She barely graduates. The sources say she was only 1 percentage point above failing her final exams.
Just 1 point.
And the only reason she got that passing grade, the only reason she even got to walk across that stage, was because she earned extra credit by scrubbing countertops and mopping the industrial kitchen floors for a solid month.
That is just so brutal. That physical backbreaking work just to scrape by. It's the complete opposite of the glamorous chef dream, isn't it?
Totally. You have this passionate, skilled person who's reduced to being a custodian just to avoid being officially labeled a failure.
And the sources even describe her, right after the ceremony, immediately shoving her undeserved cap into a public trash can. She felt like she only had a sliver of my dignity still intact.
Wow. And then that sliver was just systematically destroyed during her internship in New York under this infamous Chef Davis.
And this wasn't professional criticism. This was, it was emotional abuse. He made her the official mascot for what not to do as a chef.
That's horrible.
Yeah. He used these constant condescending comments, forced her to take zeros on assignments. He was intentionally trying to break her spirit.
So this goes way beyond a career setback. This is real emotional trauma, and you see the physical toll it took on her. The experience caused profound anxiety, leading to on-page panic attacks.
And what I find so compelling is how specific her triggers are. It's not just the memory of Chef Davis, it's the environment itself.
Gotcha.
The fluorescent lights and the sterile metal countertops of industrial kitchens. The very places that used to be her dream are now triggers for this crippling fear.
The author is basically giving us a roadmap of her PTSD. That cold, sterile, brightly lit space is the opposite of the warmth and comfort she associates with, real cooking. It's the physical manifestation of being exposed and judged.
And like you said, the book's content warnings are right there. Mild themes of grief and heart attack, emotional trauma, anxiety, and on-page panic attacks. We're meant to understand that the stakes for her recovery and for her return to Rome are incredibly high.
So when she finally leaves New York, she is just completely spent. She's ready to sob my way through the night, but even her apartment offers no comfort. It's this old Brooklyn brownstone that basically mirrors her internal chaos.
It's such a perfect portrait of urban misery, isn't it? She's living with paper-thin walls, a leaky window unit, and a truly, truly terrible roommate named Bryce.
Oh, Bryce.
Bryce is a work-from-home graphic designer, so he's always there, and he never cleans anything. The sources specify cake spaghetti sauce on the walls and, get this, use condoms in the communal trash.
Ugh. That one detail, the used condoms, it tells you everything you need to know about the environment she's in.
It's a total collapse of personal boundaries, of basic respect.
Yeah.
And then there's this loud caveman guy who's always over. It's just this constant grinding stress. No wonder she has this fantasy of just emptying the trash all over Bryce's bed.
Oh, absolutely. It just makes her feel so powerless. But amidst all of that chaos, we find this one shining, almost absurd little detail that hints at Madison's true, compassionate side.
Sammy the tortoise.
Sammy the tortoise.
The tiny tortoise she rescued from Central Park. He was half squashed, living in a plastic box with a little pink Band-Aid on his shell.
And she's trying to nurse this tiny, vulnerable creature back to health, keeping him hidden for 6 months until he's strong enough to be released. This protective instinct she has, this capacity for care, it's totally at odds with the failure label she's put on herself.
Right. She's capable of saving something, but she just can't seem to save herself.
And that failure to save herself leads to the decision to go home to Rome, Kentucky. But even then, Rome is not an option in her mind. The thought of sleeping on her successful siblings' couches is just unbearable to her.
She dreads the idea that her sisters will once again be babysitting her latest failure. So her return isn't this triumphant homecoming. It's a retreat. It's fueled by pure exhaustion.
Which is such a critical turning point. Her return isn't really voluntary. It's a lifeline that's disguised as a job offer, the chance to open a restaurant with James Huxley.
And that brings us perfectly to part two. James Huxley, the steadfast owner. He is set up to be the solid bedrock, the complete emotional and physical opposite of Madison's chaotic life.
James is the definition of stability, right? He's the full-time owner of Huxley Farm, which is all about its mission. Quality over quantity, selling directly to consumers, maintaining a legacy.
He thrives on structure. He loves his early mornings, starts at 5 a.m., meticulously brews his strong dark roast coffee the way his dad taught him. Madison even jokingly calls him an oak table. Sturdy, reliable, immovable.
But just like Madison's outward failure hides this deep compassion, James's outward stability is hiding a ton of internal turmoil.
A ton. The sources reveal he's quietly suffering from elevated blood pressure, which his doctor, Dr. Mackey, confirms is entirely stress-induced.
And that stress is rooted in this really deep family trauma. He is constantly reliving the memory of his father's heart attack just 2 years earlier, finding him falling to his knees in the greenhouse.
So James has taken on this role of protector and provider, but he's basically sacrificing his own health to do it. He hides it from his parents, who are retired in Florida, desperately trying to maintain this fiction that the farm is great and everything's fine.
And the financial burden just adds this crushing layer to all that stress.
Yeah.
We learn from his brother, Tommy, that the farm doesn't have any money.
Right.
James is risking its entire future on the success of this new restaurant. He's shouldering this whole legacy, constantly worried his own grave will be dug beside the green bean crop if he fails.
And what makes that financial risk even bigger is his commitment to the farm's principles. He turns down a massive contract with this company, Anderson Food Distributions, because it would force him to prioritize quantity over quality.
So he's choosing the ethical legacy over a guaranteed profit, which just magnifies the pressure he's under for this restaurant to succeed.
It really does. Which makes you wonder, why take this huge, unprecedented risk? Opening a restaurant, it requires a ton of capital, and it all hinges on a chef who, by every outward sign, seems professionally unreliable.
And that is where we get the secret narrative arc. James's long-standing secret love for Madison.
This wasn't some gradual crush. It was like instantaneous, a lightning bolt. The sources pinpoint the exact moment. A random Monday in her early 20s when she came over to borrow his pressure washer.
He saw her smile and just thought, holy shit, Madison is beautiful. And he admits he's been beaten up by it ever since.
He tried to move on, date other women like Jeanine from the pie shop, but he just can't shake this feeling for Madison. And this hidden, almost worshipful love is the entire reason for the new restaurant.
He only moved forward with the greenhouse plan as a very conscious, calculated strategy to grow her home.
He just knew, deep down, that the farm's future, the restaurant's success, it all hinged on Madison and only Madison being the chef. He believed in her talent, even when his own brother Tommy was warning him about her overly emotional and chaotic track record.
That faith, putting his entire family legacy on the line for the woman he secretly loves, is the ultimate proof of his commitment.
And the sources are just filled with these small, intentional things he does that Madison, in her haze of self-doubt, just completely misses.
James isn't just her boss. He's trying to build a sanctuary for her.
For instance, the chef's quarters. It's not some cramped employee apartment. It's this adorable house, 800 square feet of charming decadence, which finally feels like a real home to her after that horrible place in New York.
And the way he furnishes it is so personal. He makes sure her old bed from her sister Emily's house is moved in, giving her a piece of familiar comfort.
And then there's the new bedding, described as soft as cotton candy. It was a housewarming gift from his mother, Ruth. Madison even innocently asks if it's normal for the owner's mom to buy the new chef's linens.
She has no idea.
She has no idea how connected she already is to the Huxley family's emotional life. Ruth later confirms it, admitting James has been yapping her ear off about Madison for 2 years, ever since she started culinary school.
He's also an incredible observer. He remembered these tiny, vulnerable details about her chaotic New York life. The little bookstore she loved, the cracked window in her room during a snowstorm, the time she spent 2 hours knocking on doors to find a lost dog's owner.
He remembers that she was the only one in her awful New York apartment who ever bothered to wash the communal towels. These details show he isn't just in love with some idealized version of her. He sees her genuine kindness, her resilience, her quiet acts of service, all the things she never gives herself credit for.
And that moment where she accidentally dials his number sobbing is so pivotal. He doesn't panic. He just uses what he calls his shovel attitude to dig into her pain. He threatens to get on a plane and show up at her door if she won't talk.
He's forcing intimacy because he knows she'll just retreat into herself if he lets her.
That's the core of his contradiction, isn't it? He's the solid, grounded farmer, but his whole emotional life is fueled by this years-long protective admiration. He sees her chaotic wildness not as a flaw, but as a strength. It's the very thing he's too scared to embrace in himself.
Right. And he was so determined to protect her that he initially used his brother, Tommy, as the point of contact for the job, trying to keep a professional distance, a decision he regretted the second she came home.
Which brings us to the setting where this entire complicated relationship and Madison's healing has to unfold. Rome, Kentucky.
Rome is not just a backdrop. It's a critical character in her healing. It's a sanctuary from the sterile brutality of New York, but it's also the place where her deep-seated insecurities were born.
Yeah, the source material even includes a map showing how close everything is. Huxley Farm, the town square, the family houses, Hank's bar. It's this tight-knit community where, privacy is basically non-existent.
And the centerpiece of all this, of James's plan and Madison's potential comeback, is the restaurant, the greenhouse.
Which is steeped in emotional history. It's on Huxley Farm, a renovation of his granny's old greenhouse. A building that was damaged in a storm, but held so much sentimental value, they couldn't bear to tear it down.
So converting it is this profound symbolic act. They're turning a damaged structure into a place of life, of gathering, of rebirth. Madison is instantly captivated. The design, with windows for walls and a ceiling, it gives you the feeling of sitting directly in the middle of the crops.
She just sees it as perfect. It's the absolute antithesis of the sterile, fluorescent horror of her New York kitchen.
And Madison's vision for the branding is a complete rejection of that LA or New York pretension. It's all rooted in her Southern heritage. Food from the land, handmade pottery from the local studio, embroidered linens from the quilt shop. She's reclaiming her roots.
But then, let's talk about the Walker family dynamic. Her siblings, Emily, Annie, Noah, and Amelia, they're her support system, but their love is also the source of her deepest insecurity.
Totally. She struggles with this feeling that the restaurant is just a mercy, not a real opportunity, because her family has this chronic history of babysitting her failures.
And those anecdotes are both hilarious and deeply painful. Her sister Emily wrote Madison's wedding speech because she knew Madison would forget. Emily also submitted her college essays.
And her brother Noah, who owns the pie shop, once bribed state fair judges with free pies so Madison could win a poetry competition during her brief obsessed with poetry phase.
I forgot about that one.
These actions, they're met with love, but they just cement Madison's belief that she's incapable of achieving anything on her own. It reinforces that failure identity.
And the small-town flavor is so essential. You have these wonderful rivalries, like Mabel, the owner of the inn, and Harriet, who owns the market, and Delight's in proving she owns the moral high ground.
Harriet uses binoculars to birdwatch Mabel's inn,
Which Madison correctly calls a twisted hate-to-love dynamic. It shows you the community is complicated, loving, and very, very involved in each other's business.
Then you have the classic rom-com confusion layered over everything. The pregnancy decoy. Annie orders a decaf coffee, and immediately the whole family assumes she's pregnant.
And then Noah catches his wife, Amelia, secretly Googling pregnancy symptoms, which just throws everyone off.
Until the final scene reveals this brilliant sisterly plan. Amelia and Annie concocted the whole thing to use Annie as a decoy to keep Amelia's own pregnancy a secret until they were ready to announce it. It's a perfect example of how this family operates.
Complex, over-involved, and fiercely loyal.
But the most disruptive variable in this whole system, the one that threatens James's plan and Madison's healing, is his own brother Tommy.
Tommy is the big city success story. He's attractive, confident, maybe a little too cocky. He runs Salt House, a successful hospitality firm in LA. He's the one James initially used as the professional front.
And the problem is, Madison had a huge crush on Tommy for years, starting when she was 13. She still admits he's a douchebag, but also successful as it gets.
So the tension when Tommy shows up is just immediate.
And he dives right in, designing the first menu concept, grains. Madison hates it instantly. She calls it LA and Kentucky.
Yeah.
And a mockery of their roots. It's the exact sterile, trend-based concept she just fled from.
And then comes the manipulation. Tommy, who is just on a date with someone else, stages this huge romantic declaration. He gets down on one knee, proclaims his love for Madison.
And even gets her middle name wrong during the big speech.
It's just calculated emotional cruelty disguised as romance. Madison calls him a charming, lying jerk. And we find out later his real motivation wasn't about Madison at all. He was trying to pressure James into acting on his own feelings.
Tommy admits he intentionally used Madison to manipulate James because he felt so disconnected from his brother's life back in Rome. He figured, since Madison wasn't interested in him anyway, no harm, no foul.
But the harm is profound. It's an emotional bomb that nearly destroys the sanctuary James was trying to build for Madison, and it sets the stage for that massive physical confrontation later on.
Which brings us to the core of the novel, that slow, painstaking burn of self-acceptance and the development of the genuine, deeply needed connection between Madison and James.
And their relationship finally starts to break through the surface almost by accident. At Hank's bar, they make a pinky promise to be friends. They deliberately push Noah, the perpetual family protector and human buffer, out of the way.
And that agreement, this new era of real friendship, allows for this radical, necessary vulnerability.
Madison finally feels safe enough to share the full depth of her trauma, her messiness, her New York misery, and the fact that a guy named Caden made her feel cheap and used and discarded.
Which led to her year-long voluntary celibacy. This is Madison being truly seen for the first time.
And James reciprocates. The steadfast farmer reveals his own messy truth. He has an on-and-off smoking habit he picked up from his dad, a silent, self-destructive vice he uses to cope with all the stress.
And then we get the emotional weight behind a simple comfort food. Madison makes him cinnamon toast. James laughs at first, but then reveals what it really means to him. His mother used to make it for them after grueling farm work. It's this moment of shared, unspoken history and comfort.
The critical point here is James's response to her celibacy. He just respects her decision, unconditionally. Unlike the toxic men in her past who ran away when she showed emotion, James just sinks into it with her.
And Madison notes that James is the only man she's ever just laid in bed with and laughed, instead of feeling isolated or belittled, that safety is the foundation of her healing.
Then the New York trip she takes is the catalyst for her professional recovery. She finally reveals the real reason she went back. A prearranged meeting with her idol, the legendary chef Zora Brooks.
And the twist is that Chef Zora Brooks is actually the mother of Josie. The classmate Madison had spent all of culinary school avoiding because Josie was so talented and seemingly perfect.
Madison was so focused on her own failure, she couldn't even see a potential friend standing right next to her.
Right. And that realization that she did have a friend in New York helps her see how much her self-esteem had been dried up by all that negativity. She couldn't recognize genuine kindness.
But the meeting with Chef Zora is pivotal. Zora gives her the one piece of wisdom she desperately needs to hear. Zora tells her that the feeling of inadequacy, it doesn't fully go away.
Madison is stunned. She expects her idol to have mastered perfection.
But Zora explains that the feeling just gets easier to manage, that it becomes a friend that pushes you to be better, not a chain around your ankle. She validates Madison's entire history, her desire to change and experience new things, as a strength, not a flaw.
She basically reframes Madison's anxiety and chaotic energy as a positive driver.
And that external validation is paired perfectly with James's constant, unwavering emotional support. He tells her she is resilient and inspiring precisely because she's brave enough to throw yourself into whatever it is you love, even when it fails.
And James realizes that willingness to risk is exactly the courage he's been lacking, always following the safe, defined path of the farm.
The emotional peak comes during that roof scene in New York. They share a laugh and a kiss, and Madison has this profound realization that he is irresistible and the standard against which I judge all other men. The city of her failure becomes the city of her romantic breakthrough.
So when she gets back to Rome, the focus immediately shifts to conquering her professional trauma, specifically those sensory triggers tied to Chef Davis's cruelty. She finds herself just paralyzed outside the sterile kitchen, frozen by the sight of the industrial fluorescent lights.
And James's response here is maybe the single most important act in the entire novel.
Yeah.
It just signals the depth of his care. He doesn't just offer empty words, he acts.
He fills the entire kitchen space with the gentle warmth of every lamp he owns to get rid of that harsh fluorescent glare.
You just have to sit with that detail. He brought every lamp from the house, every soft, warm light source he could find, and he transformed that cold, sterile environment into something soft and inviting.
It's the ultimate act of remembering and catering to her specific vulnerable needs. It brings Madison to tears because it proves he wasn't just listening to her story of trauma, he internalized it.
That physical transformation sets up the crucial emotional breakthrough. James pushes her to finally confront the shame of her extra credit graduation, the floor scrubbing.
And James's response is the final piece of validation she needs. He tells her flat out, I don't care about any of that. The risk wasn't worth it to me with anyone else running the kitchen, but with you, I knew it would succeed.
He's saying that her determination, her willingness to scrub floors just to get that diploma, was the proof of her resilience he was betting on all along.
He essentially gives her permission to embrace imperfection. He tells her, tonight, make a mess if you want, have a hell of a good time, you've earned it.
And she does. She finally embraces the joy of cooking again, scooping up flour and tossing it in the air, creating this metaphoric snow globe of creativity and healing. Imperfection is officially on her side again.
But of course, that beautiful moment is immediately shattered by the soft launch chaos. Tommy arrives with James's parents, creating a pressure cooker. And then he provokes James, revealing his stress-induced health issues and his true motivation for the restaurant bringing Madison home.
This exposure is too much for James. It culminates in that full-blown sibling tussle in the parking lot, which is painful but necessary. And to make it worse, there are paparazzi taking photos, immediately speculating the fight was over Madison.
So Madison, seeing all this public chaos, retreats. She's ready to quit and run back to New York. But this time she's stopped by Mabel, the sharp-witted inn owner. And Mabel gives her the tough love her family has always been too soft to give.
Right. Mabel doesn't coddle her. She reminds Madison of her strength. A weak person wouldn't have come back here. She tells her she has to go back to the kitchen and show what you're made of. And that external demand for accountability is exactly what Madison needs.
Her next confrontation with James's parents provides the final pieces of her self-acceptance puzzle. Ruth, James's mom, validates Madison's entire personality. She tells her she loves Madison's wild heart.
And this connects directly to Madison's mother, Charlotte, who was known for her passionate, boundary-crossing personality. Ruth reveals this devastating history. The family intentionally kept stories of Madison's parents quiet to protect you from that pain.
But Ruth realizes they did Madison a disservice by protecting her from grieving and understanding her lineage. This protection just made Madison feel other and alone in her fire. Madison finally realizes her chaotic, passionate identity comes directly from her mother and she can embrace it.
Meanwhile, the Huxley brothers finally reconcile. James admits the depth of his internal struggle, confessing he was so jealous of you I've avoided you for years, resenting Tommy's freedom.
And Tommy admits his manipulation, explaining he used Madison because he felt so disconnected. The painful brawl forced both of them to finally confront their buried fears.
The final resolution between James and Madison is just. It's beautiful, funny, and uniquely them. Mabel, who is never fooled, confirms she knew they were together because she saw James's big boots sticking out from under Madison's bed.
A hilarious domestic confirmation.
It really is. And James shows up with 2 turtle enclosures. Sammy, her original rescue, and a new his and hers turtle. It shows that even in all that chaos, he was focused on their shared quirky future.
And Madison, having reclaimed her power, sets James's specific humorous atonement. He has to take a shower in his boots and nothing else, while she sits there and eats cinnamon sugar toast.
It's this small, specific act that symbolizes their unique balance. Madison embracing her authority and James proving his commitment to her happiness no matter how ridiculous.
And in a final satisfying note, Madison encourages Mabel to give Harriet, her rival, a shot. Madison has learned that being known, even the worst parts of you, is beautiful. And the story ends with them spotting Mabel and Harriet sitting together, watching The Price is Right. The small town is healing, just like Madison is.
Wow. That is an extensive and just a really satisfying deep dive into the emotional landscape of In Your Dreams.
Yeah.
We've covered Madison's transformation from a self-defined failure through a confident chef who embraces her wild heart, and James's painful struggle to find the courage to admit his feelings. It just beautifully illustrates how community can be the setting for profound healing.
Definitely.
Before we wrap up, we always like to pivot to material that sometimes comes with these sources. In this case, it's a really compelling section on the crisis in children's reading, and it ties in, to the importance of stories and narrative that we've been talking about.
It's a perfect connection. I mean, if you look at Madison's journey, it was a profound act of rewriting her own self-narrative. And that journey begins with the ability to access and engage with stories. The key finding from Hachette UK's Raising Readers research is really striking.
What is?
Reading for fun is the single biggest predictor of a child's future life chances. It actually outweighs major factors like family circumstance, parents' education, or income.
That is massive. We're talking about academic results, mental health, long-term wealth, ambition, all tied to the simple act of enjoying reading,
And it's not about mandated reading lists. It's about reading for fun.
which makes the current decline in children reading for fun a pretty profound societal crisis.
The statistics are sobering. In 2024, studies found that 1 in 10 children and young people aged 5 to 18 in the UK did not own a single book at home.
Wow.
Yeah. That lack of access to foundational storytelling dramatically limits their ability to see possibilities and, write their own future stories.
So, if you're listening and wondering what you can do, the publisher offers some really specific, actionable advice. Simple things can have a huge impact, starting with reading to children for just 10 minutes a day. That brief, consistent connection makes a verifiable difference.
They also encourage visiting bookshops and libraries together, making it a fun outing. And audiobooks count as reading for fun too, which is great for busy routines. And crucially, supporting school libraries and giving books as gifts are necessary actions to combat that ownership gap.
It's a powerful link back to the power of narrative. Madison's self-discovery was enabled by external validation and the realization that she could rewrite her story. And access to stories is just foundational for young people to build their own resilient sense of self.
Absolutely. The lessons Madison learned about failure and resilience are encapsulated in stories available everywhere. Ensuring access to those narratives is a primary investment in the future.
So, what does this all mean for you, the listener, right now? Let's go back to Madison's final beautiful realization, the one that broke that failure cycle for her. She learned that failure isn't a finite, damning event. She said it is a swipe of paint on a paper. The more strokes of paint, the more beautiful the picture. Her shame, her extra credit, her disastrous prom night, they were all strokes of paint.
And James saw those strokes as determination. Chef Zora saw them as a friendly push. Her mother's legacy provided the context. Madison's willingness to fail, to try again, and to pivot wasn't a mark of inadequacy, but proof of her inherent wild strength.
So we'll leave you with this final thought based on her journey. What failures in your own history, that disastrous job, the relationship that imploded, the creative project you quit because it got too hard, what if those are actually the vital strokes of paint you can now embrace? Not as markers of inadequacy, but as proof of your own resilience, your determination, and your own wild heart. Think about those detours. They might just be the reason your final picture is more complex, more dynamic, and more beautiful than you ever imagined.